North Carolina citizens by the ever increasing fines and fees and penalties that are assessed in our court system. And so it's really no surprise that the impact of this current COVID-19 crisis is going to fall, or is falling, and will continue to fall most heavily on the communities who are most impacted by excessive fines, fees, and penalties. And so generally that's where we see people who are living paycheck to paycheck, often already entangled in the criminal justice system, and disproportionately people of color. A lot of focus in the news and in a lot of the advocacy work has been placed on the public health tragedy caused by COVID-19, which is a valid place to place our focus. But our coalition is really concerned about the economic impact that this pandemic will have, because that will likely lead to more public safety and health issues as well. So in light of this economic recession that we're facing, our coalition is recommending broad policy changes in order to mitigate the impact of the upcoming recession, or the recession that we're currently entering. So since the COVID-19 pandemic started earlier this year, our coalition has sent letters to a number of North Carolina state officials requesting, I'm sorry, trying to make sure I have the tech right here. We sent a number of letters to a number of North Carolina state officials requesting policy changes in light of the pandemic. And so thus far, we have delivered letters to the Department of Motor Vehicles, the DMV, the Association of Sheriffs and Chiefs of Police, the League of Municipalities, the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners, and two committees in the House of Representatives at the North Carolina General Assembly. And so we want to take this time and use this event to hear from you all and to hear from people across the state about their experiences with court costs and fees since the start of COVID. Sorry, I'm getting a note to switch to speaker view. Can you all see me? Nod if you can. Okay. All right. I think I'm good. Maybe I just needed to update it. So as I was mentioning, so we want to use this event to hear from you all and people across the state about their experience and your experiences with court costs and fees since the start of COVID-19. We also want to use this time to share with everyone some resources and some tools that we think would be helpful to continue the work despite this stay-at-home order, however that continues to develop over the coming weeks and months. So we're going to start by providing some updates on what we know is already happening across the state. And then we're going to open it up to you to provide updates as to what's happening in your local jurisdictions or what your local communities are experiencing. After that, we're going to have a training that's led by Christy Puckett-Williams, who most of you all probably remember from our February convening, who hosted the court watching training. Christy's going to present on how we can continue to organize in our socially distant environment, share some information on state and local actors and tactics and strategies to continue pushing for policy changes. After that, we'll have a short presentation on digital organizing tools that you all can utilize during these socially distant times, just because we can't have our regular community meetings and trainings and gatherings right now. So we'll talk about tools like Zoom, social media, and other programs and platforms that allow us to continue this organizing work from our homes. So there's a lot in store for tonight, but we want to be sure that this is as interactive as possible. So we will have some polling questions for everyone to answer as the event goes on. We also want to encourage everyone to use the Q&A feature on Zoom to ask questions to presenters. So everyone should see a Q&A button at the bottom of their Zoom, and you can use that. That question will go to everyone, and we will try to get through all of the questions that people pose as the night goes on. We will have someone monitoring this Q&A chat to make sure that we are not forgetting about those Q&A questions as we're presenting. So I think it's probably best to start out by testing out this polling feature. Let's see. So the first question is, have you personally been affected, have you or a loved one been affected by criminal justice system related fines and fees during the COVID-19 crisis? And if yes, what types of fines or fees have you been asked to pay? Everyone should be able to see that poll now. Okay, we'll give it about 20 more seconds. I think there's about 20 people that haven't voted yet. I'm getting some questions in the chat. You guys can only see the panelists, but there are a number of attendees here. So far, we have 28 that have voted. So we'll wait for a couple more. All right. So it looks like we have a number of people who have been impacted, many who have not, particularly through probation or post-release supervision fines and fees, and then just other fines and fees. And so we want to dig into what that other looks like. But I am actually going to turn it over to our first set of panelists to start talking about what's going on across the state thus far, and then kind of turn that into a conversation with you all so that we can determine kind of what some of these other fines and fees you've been asked to pay are. So at this point, we have 4 presenters who are going to collectively discuss certain policies and updates. And that is Ms. Keisha Millette, Laura Holland, Jennifer Marsh, and Charla Rios.
Hi, I'm Keisha Millette. Can everyone see me? Just want to confirm. You're able to see. Okay, great. So I would like to give you some updates regarding our efforts with the Attorney General, the North Carolina League of Municipalities, and the General Assembly. So as Whitley mentioned, we realize that many of us, all of us, are impacted by this pandemic, but it's particularly those communities that are financially vulnerable that are bearing the brunt. And we want to do what we can to think about how to address the outstanding debts, particularly the criminal justice debt that people are facing. And so we have, as Whitley mentioned, written letters to various agencies. So one of those letters was to Attorney General Josh Stein. We were asking him to use his discretion to not submit debts that are owed to local municipalities until 2021. Basically, local municipalities can submit debts that are owed to them, such as for parking tickets or other debts. The Attorney General, however, has some discretion in deciding whether or not to submit those. And so we wrote a similar letter to the North Carolina we wrote a similar letter to the North Carolina League of Municipalities, asking them to encourage their member municipalities to hold off on submitting those debts as well that are owed to local agencies until 2021. In terms of the Attorney General, we are still waiting on updates regarding what's happening locally. However, the Attorney General's office did applaud local utility commissions for making some changes related to COVID around that, but we still would like to see more efforts in that direction. Regarding the League of Municipalities, however, we've also not heard from them, and we believe that folks can take some local action to encourage their local municipalities to consider the needs of their residents in related to this COVID crisis. And we just know that this is part of the debt that can mount up and can really impact folks locally. So we also submitted a letter to the General Assembly asking them to eliminate fines and fees and court costs, also for the similar fines and fees that are owed at the juvenile justice level, to eliminate probation violations for unpaid court debt, and eliminate revocation of driver's licenses for non-payment. And so we know that the General Assembly over the last 2 weeks last week rather, was working to put together COVID relief packages. We had an opportunity to look at those, and I'll review some of the most relevant details related to fines and fees, but ultimately we know that there's still a lot more work for them to do. So the Senate Bill 704 is a spending package. And so that does not include any specifics related to the fines and fees that we're discussing today. However, the House bill package, which both were signed by Governor Cooper earlier this week, is intended to provide assistance for local governments and state residents. So we just recognize that these bills are not perfect. There are funding gaps and limitations on assistance for state residents. The House bill directly addresses fines and fees, and with that, it's specific to DMV fines and fees. So it extends deadlines for 5 months for renewing or updating credentials, which might include a driver's license, vehicle registration, inspection certification, or other credentials. And that's only if they expire between March 1st, 2020 and August 1st, 2020. And it states in that provision that affected individuals will be notified by the DMV. The bill also waives DMV fines, fees, or penalties for failure to renew these credentials. Again, driver's license, vehicle registration, or inspection certification during that time period. So that generally what we see here is that drivers who have these credentials set to expire between March 1st, 2020 and August 1st, 2020 will get a 5-month extension on renewing those credentials without penalty. The House bill also allows state agencies to take additional steps to delay or change, modify collection of fees, fines, penalties, or interest. And so we know that we believe that that may also apply to the DMV. So there may be an opportunity for the DMV to do a broader reach in terms of how it addresses fees, fines, or penalties owed to it. So we know that these laws offer some assistance to North Carolina residents concerned about fines and fees, but they do not nearly do enough. So at this time, I will turn it over to Laura Holland to talk more about what the DMV could be doing.
Thank you, Keisha. My name is Laura, and I'm an attorney with the North Carolina Justice Center. And along with Keisha and Ivy, I work with the Fair Chance Criminal Justice Team to combat the criminalization of poverty and the criminalization of race. And today I'm just going to briefly give an overview of the advocacy we took towards the North Carolina DMV. So in North Carolina, a person's driver's license is automatically suspended when they fail to pay their fines and fees that are related to their traffic tickets. And the DMV is the sole agency that suspends driver's license in North Carolina. This has a disproportionate impact to people of color and people who are living paycheck to paycheck. The situation is even more impactful on those groups of individuals during this pandemic, because so far about 1 million North Carolinians have lost their jobs because of the pandemic. And so they're not able to pay their court costs and fines and fees because they're having to pay for shelter, food, and other essentials without having a job. It's also essential during this time because social distancing is nearly impossible for people who don't have driver's license and cars, because they will be forced to use public transportation or get rides with other people. So knowing this is the current situation we're in, the North Carolina Fines and Fees Coalition wrote a letter to the DMV asking the DMV to take immediate action in coalition with the governor to reduce some of this harm. We asked that the North Carolina DMV immediately reinstate all driver's licenses that are currently suspended for failure to pay traffic tickets. We asked the DMV to put a moratorium on suspension of driver's license for unpaid traffic tickets for an unreasonable amount of time. We also asked the DMV to waive the reinstatement fee, which is $65, and the $50 service fee that is needed to reinstate your driver's license at the DMV, and then to waive the administrative DMV hearing fee that starts at $200 that's needed for people who are otherwise eligible to reinstate their driver's license but have a permanent suspension on their driving record. And we asked for all of those measures to be taken for a reasonable amount of time, but we suggested that it will be in place until September 2021. As of yet, we have not heard that the DMV respond to our letter, nor have we any indications that the DMV have taken those specific actions to alleviate some of the harm caused by the coronavirus. And so those are some advocacy tools that we can use our advocacy tools to continue to push on those relief efforts. And that's the DMV update. So with that, I'm going to pass the presentation on to Jennifer Marsh to talk about the advocacy efforts with the courts.
Thanks, Laura. As she said, I'm Jennifer Marsh. I'm an attorney. I work at Self Help, and wanted to talk about where we are with the courts. And early in the response to the pandemic, some counties took steps to address the issues being created by the local stay-at-home orders and the shutdown of local businesses. This was a county by county basis. We'll take Orange County as an example. On March 16th, which was pretty early, the Chief District Court Judge, Joseph Buckner, issued orders extending criminal court cases and payment times by 40 days for anything owed to the court that was due before April 17th. The sheriff was very proactive. He was able to negotiate the waiver of fees for one phone call every 3 days for those who were in the county jail. The county also took immediate steps to reduce their incarcerated population and was successful in getting a 50% decrease in the pretrial population. Efforts like these were great, but it's just a start, and they don't go far enough, and only occurred in a few jurisdictions that were being proactive. On April 2nd, which was several weeks after many of us were unable to go to work regularly, is when the Chief Justice, Sherry Beasley, issued 7 emergency directives covering the entire judicial branch. These directives halted most court business until June 1st, moved remaining proceedings to a remote platform, and extended the due date for payments due before May 30th by 90 days. Local jurisdictions have been encouraged to reduce their incarcerated population, but those decisions are still being made at the county level and are not consistent across the state. We expect to hear more from the Chief Justice about the plans for courts after June 1st. She stated publicly that there's no way the courts will make a quick return to business as usual. So there's likely to be a slow phased re-engagement. She also stated we're unlikely to have jury trials before fall. So, it's unclear how much court business can actually be handled during this interim time. So we will, keep track of that, keep advocating for payment extensions, and hope that we're able to get those times extended. I will pass this on to Charla, who's going to talk about law enforcement at this time. So thanks.
Great, thanks, Jennifer. Hi, everyone. My name is Charla Rios, and I'm a researcher at the Center for Responsible Lending. Before I talk about law enforcement, I think we have another poll that we wanted to launch. Whitley or Ivy, if you're able to launch that poll before we get into our conversation. So the question asked, during this time of pandemic, how long do you think people impacted by job loss or loss of income would need to pay fines and fees? 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, or more than 18 months? And if we'll, Whitley or Ivy will launch that poll.
I believe the poll is launched. We're getting responses, but some folks are maybe having some difficulties.
If you feel comfortable with it and you're having difficulties, you're also open to entering your response in the chat box, but there's no pressure to do that. Once we get a consensus, then we'll look at the results.
And if you are not able to see the polling question, I'll just repeat it now for those who want to put in their responses into the chat box. It's one question, and it says, during this time of pandemic, how long do you think people impacted by job loss / loss of income would need to pay fines and fees? 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, or more than 18 months?
Okay, Ivy, do we have a good number of folks?
Yep.
Great.
We're sharing the
Thank you.
results.
So the results, as we can see, of course, there's an overwhelming support for those advocating for more than 18 months. And I see some folks in the chat too that have also agreed with that. So around 73%. That's followed up by 12 months. 9% said 18 months and 3% said 6 months. So thank you all for participating in that poll. I'm going to talk again, as I mentioned, about some of our advocacy around law enforcement. I'm going to share some of the points of the letter that we wrote. As a reminder, with this and all of the letters, these are located on our website, incriminaljusticeDebtNC.org. And you could look under our COVID-19 tab and review this letter and others that we've shared with respective government officials. So around a month today, which was April 7th, we sent a joint letter to the North Carolina Sheriff's Association President, Sheriff John Ingram V, and to the North Carolina Association of Chiefs of Police President, Chief David Hess. And we noted in that letter, according to the US Census data, 14% of North Carolinians lived in poverty. And this was prior to the COVID-19 crisis. So we know following that, the economic impacts will be vast for those living with fines and fees. We also noted that as part of our communities, law enforcement officials are tasked with protecting all people in the communities that they serve. Specifically, in both the letters that we asked of both organizations, we asked that that they refrain from issuing warnings issue warnings on site and release those that are found to be driving on suspended licenses. We asked that there was a releasing of all individuals who are incarcerated for outstanding fines and fees or being detained because they cannot afford bail. We asked that if incarcerated persons were still housed in the jail, that they be provided with free soap, CDC approved hand sanitizer, and other disinfecting products to people incarcerated. We ask that they provide free and regular accessible phone call and email communications to people incarcerated in county jails. And we also asked that there was a waiving of all co-pays and medical visits of people incarcerated in the county jails. Of course, we invited both Chief Hess and Sheriff Ingram to respond to our letters, and did get a response from Chief Hess, noting that many municipal police departments are utilizing a cite and release procedure or have decreased traffic enforcement in light of COVID-19. The rest of our concerns, he mentioned, lie in the hands of state law regarding jail operations. And at this time, we haven't heard from Sheriff Ingram. Before we get into our next polling question and a discussion, I wanted to stop and check to see if anyone had any questions, both about the letter that I've just mentioned to law enforcement, or any of the letters that Laura, Jennifer, and Keisha mentioned earlier. And you're welcome to either put those questions in the Q&A portion at the bottom of the screen.
You can also raise your hand and we can open up your microphone if you'd like to say your question instead of type it.
Thanks, Whitley. Okay, if there aren't questions so far, we can go into our, I think our final poll question of the evening, or our second to final, which Whitley or Ivy will launch in a second. Great, so hopefully folks are seeing this on the screen. It's a yes or no question, and it asks, have you or a loved one been arrested or incarcerated during the COVID-19 crisis? Yes or no?
And same as the previous polling question, if you're comfortable and unable to actually see it, feel free to put your answer in the chat.
Thanks. So it looks like our results, for those who aren't able to see them, there was 3% that said yes and 97% said no. For those that shared yes, if you're comfortable sharing your reasons why, we welcome that. I also want to flag at this moment too, that on that website in Criminal Justice Debt NC, there is a story portal, and we encourage folks, if they feel comfortable and open to doing that, to share their stories of how fines and fees have impacted them during this COVID-19 crisis. Because we want to make sure to raise awareness around this issue, especially since we've been told that cite and release is largely what law enforcement is focused in on at this time. And that, again, that website is in your chat box, so make sure to record that and visit later on. We're going to transition right before Christy's presentation into seeing or hearing any stories that you all have seen in your local jurisdictions around fines and fees since the crisis. And if you raise your hand, we can unmute you. Or if you don't want to talk in front of everyone and feel a little camera shy, you're welcome to put any comments in the chat box, and we'll make sure to get to those. But largely, we want to hear about what's happening and what you're seeing in your local jurisdictions to make sure that those things are aligned with what we have recommended in our letters. Anyone have anything to share? If not, that is totally okay. I just will mention, looking at some of the results from our previous poll, I think it was around 10% that had shared that they had had some impact during COVID-19 with fines and fees. And about 3% that have been arrested since. So that is something to just note for our advocacy across the across North Carolina. I think I see something in the chat. I am in Alamance County and work with Sustainable Alamance. I have a client that received a letter from the Department of Revenue for a drug tax, but she's not working at the moment due to COVID-19. Thank you for sharing that in Alamance County. If folks want to elaborate at all, please make sure to raise your hand and we can unmute you, but otherwise I'll continue to read these out. Or Ivy, can you assist me too? It looks like folks are starting to write in. Thank you guys.
Yes, happy. So we have someone else to, I see that these have been sent to all panelists and attendees, but I'm just going to read them out so that folks who are live streaming are able to see the questions as well. And so we have another story. Says, I had a mom who asked what to do about her son that is just sitting in jail and has not had an opportunity to appear before a judge, wants him to be released. And I think some of these things may be addressed later throughout the presentation. So we'll wait and see for that answer. And then if I'll remind folks too that there is the Q&A portion or button at the bottom of your screen. And so if you have any questions, anything you want answered, feel free to put it in there, and then we'll make sure to either answer it to you individually or pass it to a panelist who might have more expertise on some of these things as well.
Thank you, ladies, for holding that discussion, and thank you guys for sharing your experiences. As Ivy said, they will get addressed, particularly in this next portion with Christy. So just want to put out a reminder, if you weren't able to share or didn't want to share in this portal, we also have a portal on the website where you can either type in how you have been impacted or a loved one has been impacted. You can record audio or you can record a video, just so that we can track what's happening across the state and be better advocates and make sure that we're advocating for change where things are happening that are harming our communities. So now I'm going to turn it over to Christy Puckett-Williams, who's going to discuss how we can be advocates in our own communities during COVID-19 and while we are social distancing. So this may provide some insight on how to address some of the concerns you guys shared about the practices that you guys are seeing taking place in your local communities.
Hey, thank you, Whitley. Thank you, everybody, for your attending tonight. Again, my name is Christy Puckett Williams. I am the statewide Campaign for Smart Justice Manager with the American Civil Liberties Union of North Carolina. And I'm going to be talking to y'all about how do we agitate local actors around fees and fines. And so how can we be advocates in our own communities during COVID-19? And so when we talk about that, we have to understand why we must agitate. So I wanted to give y'all some background on why fees and fines are harmful to our communities here in North Carolina. So about 200 years ago, the United States formally abolished debtors' prisons, which is the practice of jailing people who have failed to pay a debt. But today, thousands of North Carolinians are in jail and or trapped in a cycle of debt. In courtrooms across the state, there is no consistent standard for how or when fees and fines are imposed. I'm gonna say that again because I don't know if y'all heard me. In courtrooms across the state, there is no consistent standard for when or how fines and fees are imposed, despite the fact that there is a consistent standard of laws that we call the general statutes. So there are laws that address these things, but those laws are either not followed or ignored for whatever reason. So the courts are using fees and fines to replace funds that were lost due to budget cuts and tax breaks that have been given to corporations. And so literally the courts are funding themselves off the poverty and of incarcerated people or people who are caught up in the criminal legal system. And these fees and fines oftentimes aren't proportional to the crimes that have been charged, and often don't relate to any expense that the state incurred as a result of a person being charged. So the results of unpaid fees and fines are people being locked up, people losing their right to vote, losing access to public assistance, and lots of people lose their driver's licenses as a result of not being able to pay fees and fines. And so I want y'all to understand as we talk through the issue of fees and fines, the power of people, of system actors. So just so you understand that judges have a constitutional obligation to determine a person's ability to pay fees and fines, and that's not happening. Again, they have a constitutional obligation to determine whether a person can pay or not, and that is not happening. Courts often don't appoint legal counsel for people who face incarceration for failure to pay fees and fines. So many of the people who are Black, brown, and poor are unconstitutionally sentenced to jail without having been provided a lawyer, especially for these low-level driving offenses. And so offenses that don't carry jail time means that people are standing in front of a judge, even though there's no jail time associated with what they've been charged with, there is a fee or a fine. Where jail does come into play is when they are unable to pay that fee or that fine, then they can be jailed. So when a person does have an attorney, though, oftentimes we've seen that the attorneys don't sufficiently advocate for the waiver of those fees and fines. When judges don't ask y'all for a person's ability to pay, like if a person can pay or not, that means that they're, when they do ask about a person's ability to pay, they often don't tie their decisions to anything objective like the federal poverty level. They make arbitrary decisions that result in poor people being ordered to pay despite the fact that they can't. And so instead of waiving fees and fines for people who cannot pay, judges often place people under court supervision. That means that the person has to repeatedly return to court, which disrupts everything from their education to unemployment to childcare, all while spending what little money they have on court debt rather than the necessities of life. So now Ivy from the North Carolina Justice Center is going to speak to you all a little bit about fees and fines from the lawyer's perspective.
Yeah, so I'm going to talk a little bit about sort of what Chrissy had already mentioned, in particular, how, you know, there's no real uniform standard in how fines and fees are applied across the state, even though We do have the general statutes that require a judge to take into consideration a person's ability to pay, but that all ultimately comes down to the judge, that individual judge's discretion. So it's up to the individual judge how they actually apply those standards. And so in large part, the entire legal world is built upon sort of this institutional secrecy, to the point where lawyers sort of have a joke amongst themselves that we all speak legalese. We throw around these legal phrases all the time in our conversations, and particularly in court, that make it so someone who, has not necessarily undergone formal legal training has a hard time understanding what's even going on. So as soon as a person steps into a courthouse, they can feel lost and like they don't totally understand where they are and what's happening, even for something like a traffic ticket, which can be incredibly daunting for a person to have to deal with. And so that is a major reason why people need to start agitating from the inside, from a courtroom, particularly in these courtrooms where judges impose this concept of manners as punishment. I don't know how many people have been in a courtroom where a judge is telling someone to tuck their shirt in before they can come in, or saying, you're in a sleeveless shirt, so you can't come into my courtroom, or you can't come up to the bench and talk to me. And even the way courtrooms are physically designed, where a judge is sitting up on their bench looking down on the people who are in their courtroom, the people who they're supposed to be providing justice for. And that's why we need this sort of agitation from the courtroom that Christy is explaining and teaching us all so well how to do, so that we can change these things. And it's because of this institutional secrecy that it has been so hard to achieve the change that we're all talking about right now. Because if someone walks into a courtroom and immediately is put into this environment of fear, it's hard to feel comfortable to even just handle your own business, but let alone try to agitate or try to create some sort of change. And another important concept that originally Scott Holmes was here to talk about, and he can speak very eloquently on, but I'm going to fill in for him, is sort of the inherent conflict of interest in fines and fees, where a judge is imposing fines and fees essentially to finance the court system, finance the judicial system. And so there's a tension there where this judge is supposed to be using their discretion on whether or not to impose fines and fees on an individual based on that individual's ability to pay, while always having to think about having to raise money, thinking about the ways in which the general legislature is telling the judge to impose fines and fees to fund the court, to fund certain programs and all of that. And it's for these many reasons that we all need to be agitating all the time. And particularly now in this day and age with sort of COVID-19, there's no better time than now to rile people up, get stuff done, make the changes. So back to you, Christy.
Thank you, Ivy. So we talked about why this is an important discussion, like why we must agitate, right? Now we're going to talk about who we must agitate. This is the fun part, because we get to learn about the power that system actors have inside of the courtroom. And they agitate us when they hold us and impose them fees and fines. And so we want to throw some of the agitation back on them, right? And so there are ways that we can do that. Judges are the ultimate decision makers in that courtroom, though, y'all. They have the final say in any setting in their courtroom. They have the constitutional obligation to ensure that people are being treated fairly, equitably, lawfully, and have due process. And Scott Holmes taught me what this means. Due process means notice and opportunity to be heard. They need notice and opportunity to be heard. And when a judge denies a person an ability to pay termination, they are denying them the ability to be heard about how these fees and fines are going to affect them and their families, right? And so that is a violation. They are being violated. Their rights are being violated. So again, judges are the ultimate decision makers in the room. They have the final say so. And so we're going to agitate them, and I'm going to teach y'all how to do that too. The next person, system actor, my favorite, are the district attorneys. And why the district attorney is my favorite? Because district attorneys oftentimes try to distance themselves from their power, when in reality, they are one of the most powerful actors in that courtroom outside of the judge. They're more than just prosecutors. Their job is to seek justice in criminal cases. Their job is to work to prevent crime and to serve as a leader in the diverse communities that they represent. Their power, again, is tremendous because of their ability to impact the lives of millions of people, their families, and entire communities. If someone is accused of committing a crime, it is not the police, but the DA who has the sole power to decide if criminal charges are filed and the severity of those charges. They alone decide who is deserving of jail or prison sentence and who will instead be routed into a diversion program to help rebuild their life or have charges dismissed. They also have, hold on, y'all. Oh, hold on. I'm so sorry. I'm having technical difficulties. Okay, so sorry. They also have power surrounding fees and fines. That was what I was trying to get at. They have tremendous power surrounding fees and fines. But last but not least, there are legislators as well who can be agitated. So our state senators and representatives consider matters brought forth by the governor or matters that are introduced by other members to create legislation that becomes law. The legislature approves a state's budget and initiates tax legislation and articles of impeachment. That's the power that they have. So the laws that are enacted here in North Carolina by the NCGA determines what is legal and what is not. They also decide the cost of fees and fines. They set the fees and fine schedule that is in the courtroom. The legislature has also here in North Carolina intimidated judges and system actors by passing laws to track the waivers of fees and fines. So there was legislation passed that was used to track when fees and fines were waived, and that has been used as a tool to discourage the waiver of fees and fines by judges. So how do we agitate? How can we do that? Well, judges don't like to be watched. And we've noticed that when we started a court watching program. And so court watching is a tool that can be used to agitate judges in the courtroom. And we're not saying stand up and scream and shout and be held in contempt of court. That's not what you want. But we do want people to show up in the courtrooms because judges are used to defendants and their families being in the courtroom, along with any alleged victims and or witnesses. What they are not used to is the public coming in just to watch. And when we've been watching in Mecklenburg, they are visibly uncomfortable with our presence. They have no idea what we're watching for, and it makes them uncomfortable. And so how do we agitate a judge outside of the courtroom? Well, if you have court watched and you see that a particular judge is imposing fees and fines without an ability to pay inquiry, when they are campaigning, we show up to their events and we ask them why are they ignoring the Constitution? Why are they ignoring the laws? We make this an issue that they address in their platform. We force them to address fees and fines when they are campaigning and campaigning for our votes. We hold them accountable by our votes. We vote them in, we vote them out. Truly, it's that simple, right? And now it's really not that simple because we know there's lots of barriers to Black, brown, and poor people getting to the polls, but once you get there, it's simple. And so how can we agitate our DAs? Well, we can use the laws that already exist to push district attorneys to provide relief to people who are poor, who are too poor to pay court fees and fines. And an easy way to start doing this is to focus on unpaid traffic fees and fines. So there is a general statute 20-24.1 that says a license revoked under this section remains revoked until the person whose license has been revoked, and then it lists all this stuff. But the fourth point is that the person demonstrates to the court that his failure to pay the penalty, fine, or cost was not willful, and that he is making a good faith effort to pay, or that the penalty, fine, or costs should be remitted. So basically what that's saying is a DA has the ability to initiate relief on behalf of unpaid fees and fines. Because in North Carolina, failing to pay a traffic ticket causes an automatic, indefinite suspension of a person's driver's license, indefinitely. And I'm sorry, do we know what the suspension is when someone has been convicted of a DUI? What that term is? Any of the attorneys on? I think it's not indefinitely. It's 1 year. So if you get convicted of driving drunk, you get a 1 year suspension. If you just poor and can't pay for a speeding ticket, you lose your license until, right? And so that, just to put that into perspective for y'all. So court data reveals that traffic court costs are very rarely paid after 2 years of non-payment. So once a court debt reaches 2 years, what we know is that it is not a willful non-payment on people's part. It is they are too poor to pay that fee. So what we did here in Mecklenburg and in Durham and in other places across the state, well, really in 2019 in Durham and Mecklenburg, the district attorneys in those areas led initiatives to eliminate millions of dollars in long-term traffic court debt and thousands of driver's license suspensions. The debt relief programs piloted in these jurisdictions can be replicated in North Carolina jurisdictions across the state if there's support from local court officials, including district attorneys and the district court judges. In MEC, though, the DA was open to the idea, but was moving slowly. So activists and organizers on the ground were able to push him to implement the idea by meeting with him and encouraging him to do so. And when we met with him, we focused on the socioeconomic and racial implications of his inaction as well. Our district attorney here talks about justice a lot. And so we were able to question him. Did he believe that it was just that a poor person not have their license simply because they're poor? And if it's not a willful just disregard for the fee or the fine, it's a genuine cannot pay, would you be willing to do that? And so we were able to help him make his decision a little faster than what he probably was going to anyway. So with our legislators, we can agitate them as well. And a good way to do that, and I know it can be difficult, and we're not going to get all this down in 30 minutes, y'all, just so you know. I am going to provide the slide deck, and I am open to answering questions and following up with people after this. But a good way to look at our state representatives is to follow their voting patterns. When it comes time for re-election, it's important to know just how well the representative kept his or her original promises. The same way with all of the elected officials. The DA is elected as well as the judges are elected. So following their voting patterns throughout the year to stay up to date is a good way to see if what they've said on the campaign trail is what they are doing and voting for. Know how to contact your legislatures, to contact your representatives. Knowing who they are, number one, is important, and then knowing how to contact them. And that's a key for holding them accountable. You can add their office numbers to your cell phone so you can quickly let your voice be heard when you have an opinion. All you have to do is dial, identify yourself as a constituent, state your case, and it literally takes less than 5 minutes. Another way is to show up to community events. You can use email, social media, your cell phone. All of those are means to political participation that can be done from the comfort of your home. But there's something to be said for the knowledge and support gained at in-person events. When we get back to in-person events eventually, show up to their public forums, their online virtual forums, committee meetings, speaking events, and other gatherings that they hold locally. Encourage your friends and families of any political organization that you may be a part of to join as well, because we have to show politicians and local government that we're paying attention. And often that starts with just physically being there, physically being where they already are and asking them about fees and fines. Even if you don't know what their answer means, the fact that you asked the question, even if you can't ask a follow-up question the first time, the fact that you asked about fees and fines means that they know that there are people who vote for them or have the potential to vote for them that are concerned with this. Also, showing support or opposition to fees and fines has a tenfold effect if we make this public, right? So creating a public display like a rally, a march, or open forum we can reach further and maybe get picked up by the media and be able to have that conversation and reshape that narrative. And using social media and mobile devices to drum up support. We can do email blasts, petitions, flyers, brochures, all of those traditional things that we've done to move issues in the past can also be used and implemented to move things along the conversation of fees and fines. So what can you do? I'm gonna give you 7 things that you can do. Like I said, I will send you the slide deck, but you can go to the North Carolina secondchance.org website, if someone will put that in the chat. Because this information is taken directly from there of what you can do. You can establish a program to eliminate traffic court debt and restore driver's licenses, much like I just described to you that we did in Mecklenburg. You can simply talk to your DA and say, hey, did you know that there is a thing as DA initiated traffic relief, debt relief? It's been done in Buncombe, it's being done in Mecklenburg, it's being done in, these places, and name these places and see what they say. They may not say okay at first. We may have to have some follow-up conversations. I know that Daniel Bowes at the North Carolina Justice Center would be a huge help to that conversation if you want to have with him providing you with talking points and all the things that you may need to say or do. He's also an excellent resource to reach out to the DA as well. So that is a good way to just reach out to your DA and say, can we eliminate some of this traffic debt? Number 2 thing that you can do is we can change our bail policies, y'all, to be fairer, to reduce pretrial confinement and comply with the statutory restrictions on secured money bonds. Now, why is that important? We just saw, I think, something in the chat about someone who's being held who has not seen a judge, and they probably have a bail that's been set, but they're too poor to afford that bail. Now, why is that a problem? It's a problem because your ability to defend yourself, to participate meaningfully in your case is diminished when you are incarcerated. It is difficult to contact your witnesses and gather your evidence and help your attorney when you are incarcerated. And when your family is too poor to afford to purchase your freedom from the government, that means that you languish inside of a cage because you're poor. And so that's why we must change the conditions of pretrial release. And what does that mean? The statute that we have in North Carolina is not a bad statute. It's just not being followed, period, point blank. I mean, I don't know how any other way to say it. The statute is not bad. They don't follow it. And oftentimes they use, in courtrooms across the state, they use what's called a bond schedule, which whatever the level of the crime is, a class H felony or 3 misdemeanor, the monetary conditions are already set with no individualized determination of a person's ability to pay, if they are at risk for failure to appear, all of the things that a judge should be considering before imposing money. None of those things are considered in our current system of practice. We can also promote regular use of petition or order forms by local court officials to facilitate fair consideration of a person's ability to pay. So several statutes provide judges the authority to waive or eliminate fees and fines in a broad range of circumstances, including the ability to pay, change of circumstances. For several reasons, judges are rarely using their authority to eliminate fees and fines. Jurisdictions can adopt local forms based on templates that have already been made. And so that's something that you may want to look at when you go to the North Carolina Second Chance website. In January 2020, the town of Chapel Hill established the Fund for Criminal Justice Debt, which uses court facility fees to establish a fund to help people pay for the debt. So what happens is low wealth Chapel Hill residents who are taking steps to successfully reintegrate to the community, but whose ability to pay is hampered by debt, the fund actually pays the court costs. So the fund is administered by the police department's crisis unit with support from an advisory committee made up of representatives from the criminal justice department, from the criminal justice community. And so that's something that you could consider asking your local representatives, such as your city council and local court officials, to adopt. The number 5 thing that you can do is to host poverty and reentry simulations. it's very, very powerful way to educate judges, DAs, and other court officials on the impacts and realities of living in poverty in North Carolina. And so I participated in a reentry one, and I remember one of the DAs, the ADAs said when he picked up a card that said his urinalysis was dirty and he had to report back to jail, he was so upset that he picked that dirty urinalysis and had to go to jail because he just knew, because he was a system actor and had all this institutional knowledge, that he was going to be able to navigate this system better than everybody. But he didn't account for that dirty pee coming up, jacking his whole plan up, right? And he went right back to jail, and he was so mad. And I'm an abolitionist. I was a little mad, but I was also glad that he went to jail, virtually, so that he could understand that if you feel this upset about picking a card that you get to put down and walk out and go back to your office later, how would you feel if you were the person who was sitting there who actually had to go back to jail? And so these reentry and poverty simulations are great ways for people to have empathy and to increase their compassion, because sometimes we can be so far removed from another person's experience that we are unable to have a lot of empathy or compassion. But when we place ourselves in their shoes, sometimes that's the thing that gets people to change. Also, you can fundraise and administer a community bail fund. If y'all didn't know, North Carolina has a community bail fund that is ran by Andrea Muffin Hudson. And she has been doing that since, I want to say, 2016. And in January of 2020, she and I established the North Carolina Pregnancy Bail Fund. And so what we do is in Durham, she focuses on bailing out people in that area. And in the North Carolina Community Bail Fund, we bail people out all across the state who are pregnant. And so please support those, but also think of ways that you could start your own bail fund. There is a Forsyth Community Bail Fund in the Winston-Salem area. And so there's lots of ways that you can directly impact fees and fines. A bail fund basically puts the bail up, not a percentage like a bail bondsman, like you would pay a bail bondsman. We pay the entire bail, and people go to court, and the court gives us that money back. If you don't go to court, that's not a good thing. But at the end of the day, it is what it is, right? It is what it is. Some people gonna go, some people not gonna go. Some people pay their money and don't go. So you know what I'm saying? So for us, it's not about that. It's about the impact of that fee and that fine on a person and their ability to be free pre-trial so that they can effectively participate. People take plea deals, y'all. And I'm gonna say, I ain't gonna say people, I took a plea deal, y'all, because my bond was too expensive. It was $167,000. And I knew that there was no way that I would be able to afford that. That, coupled with the fact that I was pregnant and receiving no prenatal care, was just the perfect conditions for me to admit to doing something that the police had absolutely no evidence against me. But because I had sat for so long and I was so desperate to get out, I took and signed my name, put my hand in the Bible, and attested to all the things, right? And because of that bond, it was no other reason than that bond, right? So we have to look at the ways in which fees and fines affect people's ability to effectively defend themselves against a racist system that oftentimes seeks to devour Black and brown bodies with very little evidence. And fees and fines keep us trapped in that cycle of not just incarceration, but of poverty. And the final thing is prevent mugshot extortion by limiting access to booking photos. There is a debate that I've had with several people about, are mugshots public information? Like, what is public information? So there's a school of thought that is just your name and what you did is the public information. And there's a school of thought that your mugshot is also public information. But sheriffs have a lot of discretion. So we looked at 100 counties last year. Had an intern who went through all the websites to see how many sheriffs had mugshots versus how many didn't. And it was about half and half. Half the sheriff's department in North Carolina have the mugshots of the people who are incarcerated and half don't. And so mugshots are not just on the sheriff's website. Those mugshots are sold to for-profit websites that exploit vulnerable individuals by posting their mugshots online and then charging hundreds of dollars to have those mugshots removed. And it says here that in North Carolina, mugshot or booking photo is not a public record. Instead, it's a record of criminal investigation. you listen, like I said, there's this debate, but you could ask your sheriff in one of those jurisdictions that do allow mugshots, like Mecklenburg has mugshots up for a limit of 3 years, but you could ask your local sheriff to have those things removed. And that's pretty much all that I have for you, because we want to make sure that we have time for the rest of the presenters, as well as time for robust question and answer. So I'm going to turn it back over to you, Whitley.
Thank you, Christy. I'm always ready to get up and do some organizing after I hear you talk. But we almost are done for the night. Before we wrap up, we want to hear from Jarvis Johnson, Mia Walker, and Alex Williams, and they're going to present on digital organizing tools. So they're going to share some information on some tools that allow us to do outreach and organizing, as Christy was talking about, but in this socially distant environment. And the best part is many of these tools that we're going to talk about are free. So I will turn that over to you, Jarvis.
All right, thank you, Whitley. Once again, my name is Jarvis Johnston. I serve as Clean Slate Campaign Manager at Forward Justice. And before we just basically get into talking about some of these free organizing tools, most of them are free. I will throw in a few that aren't free, but we wanted to actually give a reason why these organizing tools are so needed right now. Of course, you know, we're confined to our homes. We can't go out and touch people. You know, as organizers, we're used to interacting with the public, and not being able to actually touch a person right now has been a triumph of its own. But we're continuing to push forward. So what we'll do right now is share a few slides. Myself, I'll share some slides. Mia will share a few slides, and Alex as well. The slides that we're sharing is from a training that a few of us took part in with CZI, one of the funders, and we wanted to share a bit of that information. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you all to the Criminal Justice Manager, Mia Walker. Mia, you have the floor now.
Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, you can see it.
Can somebody tell me where to share my screen?
There's a green button at the bottom.
At the very bottom of my presentation, or at the very bottom of this?
Of the Zoom screen.
I don't see it. Yeah, I'm not seeing it.
We'll actually, I guess, come back if we can get Alex Williams. He serves as our one of our organizers at Forward Justice. Alex, you have the floor now.
Everybody, as Jarvis said, I'm Alex Williams. I'm the criminal justice organizer at Forward Justice. Media platforms that most of you are familiar with. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram.
I can't hear you.
Alex, I think your microphone is covered. Can you lift your computer up or microphone up?
Can y'all hear me now?
Yes, that's better.
All right, my apologies. I got it on this little base. So I'm Alex Williams. I'm the criminal justice organizer at Forward Justice. I'm going to share with y'all about a few free social media platforms. The reason why we're doing this is because most of us are using these anyway to share our, personal posts and goofy posts with our friends and, our family members. But these tools can also be utilized as means to organize. We have a lot of people that, engage in various posts You want to try to stay consistent with those posts so people can, attach you to a certain content base, so to speak. And so these are some of the platforms that I utilize personally and that other organizers across the country are now utilizing due to the pandemic. As you see, the Facebook emblem, Twitter, Snapchat, Instagram, and there are also folks that organize using blogs. Going into the first one, Facebook is something that I personally use a lot to organize in regards to like creating events and inviting people to events. And it has those constant reminders. I also use the Facebook Messenger, video call, sometimes the Zoom.
Alex, microphone.
Sometimes my Zoom, sometimes the Zoom rooms are booked up. So I use Facebook Messenger to like build one-on-ones and, keep a relationship going with folks that I'm organizing. You can see a few different posts that folks have posted on Facebook that they use to organize. Twitter, not really a big fan of Twitter. I don't really use it a lot, but I know a lot of folks in our network use Twitter. We recently just had a Twitter storm petitioning the governor to release folks in the wake of COVID-19. It's a lot of ways that can be used with the retweets, the likes. You can share and it can be widespread, the things that you're posting. We also have blogs. Also not really too keen on blogging right now, something that I need to get into. But other folks that I know that organize using those are saying that those are pretty effective and useful in what they're trying to do. You have community Snapchat. So Snapchat, for those who may not know, which I probably should have did with Twitter as well, but sometimes we get spoiled. So Snapchat is a video recording app. You can record stories and post them to your community. Snapchat can be used as an organizing tool in ways in which you can record things that you participate in, such as actions, things of that nature, and share it with your friends and direct message them back and forth. Also, another social media platform that folks are organizing with. You can go live on Instagram as like Facebook, and you can also send direct messages back and forth. I believe there's the video call feature on Instagram. Mostly Instagram is used for folks posting pictures, videos, things of that nature. And I use this personally to like go live when we do direct actions, or if I'm posting a video from an action or something that I participated in. And the folks that comment, I engage them in the direct message. We also have online ads. So here's an example of one, which is by the ACLU, talking about the Trump administration and telling folks they have power to fight for their civil rights. You can use online ads for whatever purposes you have. And you can actually, I think with Facebook specifically, I know that you can like add money to your ad to like expand its reach. So a lot of folks are using that in these times as well. Text messaging, texting their family and their friends. Text messages can also be utilized as a way to organize, as a means to organize. A simple text message to folks that you have as volunteers or recruited as volunteers, or as your core leadership group. You can text them to let them know about actions, things like that. Sometimes that's the quickest way to get in touch with folks on your staff or folks that you organize, constituency, what have you. Email is still queen. Especially with internal meetings and internal information. We use email a lot within our network. just that's the primary go-to tool that we use. And those are all of the tools that we're utilizing right now within the pandemic to stay engaged with our folks, stay connected with our folks, and keep mobilizing our folks. And I will pass that back to Jarvis.
Thank you, Alex, for that presentation. So just to kind of go over just some more organizing tools, some of these particularly aren't free. Zoom, for instance, what we're on right now, great for hosting webinars, chatting. You can also through, as we're having this webinar, it could also serve as where you have breakout rooms. So you may have different sections of a training or convening that you may have where you can actually break them out through Zoom. And then just to be able to keep everyone together, you can actually have those Zoom calls every week where you have the capabilities of sending out a Zoom invitation to those individuals in your group to have your weekly meetings. Something else that we've just recently subscribed to is Google Suites. Google Suites is, for us, it will serve as a central location for our chapter members to be able to go and receive documents, any type of things that we may add to our toolkit. Instead of, sending it out to various different emails, everyone has the same email address, domain address where we'll all come and we'll gather that information. And also in Google Suites, like say for instance, and we all know that a lot of people are using Zoom, a lot of different organizations and businesses across the world is using Zoom right now. If we all need that backup plan. So with our subscription in the Google Suites, we have the perk of being able to do video conferencing through Google Suites as well. So just in case, Zoom crashes, we do have a backup plan. And then it gives you the administrative capabilities of adding an email address, deleting an email address, in case, someone's on board, you bring someone on board and they may leave, instead of them actually leaving with that information, you can actually, delete that email address. Alex mentioned social media, your various outlets, Facebook, Facebook Live, Facebook groups. That's a great way to be able to keep everyone locked in with each other, is having those groups. Everyone is on Facebook these days. I don't know about Instagram. I just got on Instagram probably 2 months ago, but I've been on Facebook for a few years. That's a great way to keep people engaged and keep them up to date on what's going on with your various campaigns or seminars or webinars as well. Two other interesting platforms that I want to talk about. They're actually they're free. One is Canva. Canva is a design platform that's used to make visual content. We actually use Canva for a lot of our social media content. So if you actually see some type of visual coming from Forward Justice, we more than likely use Canva to produce that. And it's something that I have not personally worked on. Our communications department, they work on it a lot, but from what we've seen, the end results of all of their work has been wonderful through Canva, and it is a free tool. Another free tool is Mailchimp. We use Mailchimp for email blasts. It's also used as a powerful data analysis, and also online meetings that you can just kind of let people know, let them know about. The next thing that I wanted to talk to you all about, the next platform, is a texting platform called Hustle. Now, this platform is not a free platform, but the reason why I like this platform is because I've been working in and around politics for well over 10 years now, and you kind of, when you go to different places, you look for you're looking for that response rate, like how often people are responding to knocking on the doors or making phone calls. But over the past few years, this texting platform Hustle, they've proven to actually provide us with a lot more a better response than being in the phones. So what I'm going to do right now is you all can see my screen. So Hustle, this is the best way to engage your audience, especially from what I've seen. And as you can see on the screen, 7.5% more revenue per hour per rep with Hustle, and let's see, and 10 times more pipeline generated more than by phone. Just personally, I think that our response rate, if we send out 1,000 text messages, we've probably engaged in, off of the initial message, we probably engaged in about 60% of conversations off of those initial text messages. So it's kind of like, think about it. If someone texts your phone, you're gonna actually look at your phone to see who's texting your phone, and then it may be a brief moment where you can respond. Something else I wanted to show you was just kind of how it works. You will basically set a measurable goal for every campaign to track the impact of your messages, whether you're driving event attendance, fundraising, or re-engaging contacts. Once you go in, it's a very self-explanatory tool, but then that Hustle is very helpful with letting you know what helping you with whatever issues that you may have. You would define your goal, create your own script. You'll begin texting, continue the conversation through text. You're building connections, and then you're also being able to let you track your results, where you can put the people that you're talking to, your future volunteers, into 3 different buckets, or however many buckets that you choose to actually put them in. And then it's basically just boiling down to working smarter and not harder. Like I said earlier, being able to get on those phones, you run into a lot of wrong phone numbers. You run into a lot of people that just may not be as engaged. But once you get that text message back, you'll actually know that person is interested. So there was one more slide that I want to show you, a piece of information that let's see. Well, I can just actually, let's see. All right. So just some more free organizing tools for everyone. Can you see my screen? All right. So the first one, and it's just a few more. Evernote. Evernote is great for note taking, workflow organization, and project management.
Jarvis, we can see your screen right now if you are sharing.
You said you can't?
You can't.
Okay. Can you see it now?
Yes, we can.
All right. So Evernote, and this just is, I think it's like 5 more. I'm just going to go over real quickly. Evernote is used for note taking, workflow organization, and project management. And all of these tools right here are absolutely free. Basecamp is another free online program where you use to organize projects, assign tasks, and communicate on collaborative efforts. Trello is another project management tool that you list to organize projects and tasks, and you can assign project dates and checklists, and access Trello onto your phone, Kindle, watch, or tablet. That way you can always have it with you, and share broad project information through assigned tasks. And then, of course, Dropbox. I use Dropbox personally for a lot of things, especially photos. You can use it for files as well. And Wunderlist would be the last one. Wunderlist is just another, it's similar to Mailchimp, where you can actually send out email blasts as well. So you may have one that you're using, you can actually use another one as a backup. And I'll make sure that Whitley will receive all of this information. There's my internet. Can you guys hear me? I'm having some internet problem. Hello? Can you hear me?
Okay.
You can hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. All right. So yeah, that was. I'll make sure that Whitley gets that information. Okay. And that everyone is share it with those free organizing tools and just kind of have a list and a brief synopsis of what they are.
Okay. Let's see if I can share my screen. Yes, I don't even see the button.
It's all right, Mia. We can share whatever you were going to share on the website later so people have access
Okay,
to it.
that's fine.
You can, if you want to just give like a brief overview, and then we can share the visual later on the website.
So I just wanted to touch on the aspect of Twitter, and primarily what I wanted to do is just share the story about Centonia Brown. Her case actually came up on Twitter via Rihanna. Rihanna saw her story and tweeted it out. And what I thought was really amazing is that so many people rallied around her simply because of the action that was placed out there by Rihanna. And so it became very explosive. People started advocating for her. People started taking her case. Her story was shared, cast wide across the country, literally. And I think that's a really great opportunity because recently, you guys know, many of you know on this call that we use Twitter to contact all of our representatives and governor and during COVID, trying to free our brothers and sisters. So just wanted to put that out there, that is a definitely really good technique in amplifying the voices of vulnerable populations. That is it.
Can y'all hear me? Okay, great. All right, well, thank you, Jarvis, Alex, and Mia. We are also, in addition to the information that we weren't able to screen share, I know that Mia's wasn't working and Jarvis's got frozen halfway through, so we will share all that information on our website in criminaljustice.nc.org. We'll also add some video tutorials to our website that demonstrate how to use the communication platforms Canva and Mailchimp. So just be on the lookout for an email. If you attend it, we'll make sure to send you an email with that information when it's updated on the website. And we started about 5 minutes late, so I like to end on time. So this is going to wrap up our event for tonight. Please remember that on our website in criminaljustice.nc.org, you can fill out a form documenting any violations you or a loved one has experienced related to COVID-19. As a coalition and as advocates across the state, we need to know what's going on in various localities so that we can be better advocates for the change where it is needed. Also on the website, we have a list to all the letters that our coalition has sent to state actors that Keisha, Laura, Charla, and Jennifer talked about earlier in the presentation related to fines and fees and COVID. We're going to continue to update our COVID page on the website as we send more letters and continue to advocate for policy changes. We're also very open to putting together letter templates that you all can use across the state to help share with your local officials if that would be helpful. So feel free to let us know how we can help you be better advocates. We're also going to have a visual of Christy's presentation from tonight for your reference on our website. There are a couple of people who asked some questions earlier and we exchanged emails with in the chat so we can follow up in further detail. Please feel free to reach out to us directly or send messages through our website so that we're aware of what's going on across the state, or if you have further questions that did not get answered tonight. We tried to monitor that, but technology will be technology. So feel free to reach out if your question did not get answered for whatever reason. We are going to continue our statewide advocacy efforts, and we want to make sure that you all continue your local advocacy efforts and know that we are willing to support you with the resources and tools to do so. So we're excited to keep working with all of you and continue this campaign to end criminal justice debt in North Carolina. Thank you all.